The 2025 Major League Baseball season is off and running, and across all 30 Major League teams, storylines are emerging. Surprises, struggles, breakouts, and early warning signs. They're all there. It's time to start connecting some of these dots and see what stories are being written about each and every team across Major League Baseball in this 2025 campaign. Welcome to the Early Observation Series here on the Baseball Banter Broadcast. Let's get into it. So you want to be a catcher in the big leagues, huh?
Home with it. Boom! Throw to the plate on a big collision. Ben Revere picked up by Kratz and he hangs on! Comes out ready, the throw to the plate, and he is going to be... Well, coming home is Davis. The tag! Max Ramirez is steamrolled.
Now, yes, in 2025, we do not see catcher collisions take place quite so impactful as we have seen in the past, but nevertheless, the rigors of the catching position still weigh heavy each and every single year on every single one that dons the tools behind the plate. But what we're seeing this year from one catcher in particular is something that is absolutely remarkable. We're in progress of seeing a potential season for the ages. Arguably the best catcher's hitting season, offensive season that we have ever seen in the sport of Major League Baseball. Kyle Raleigh is doing things in Seattle that you may not even realize how good he is doing. On this video, we're going to look at the early observation about the fact that Kyle Raleigh, the big dumper, could potentially be having the greatest offensive catcher season in the history of Major League Baseball. Let's get into it. So to really understand the context of why this season could be the greatest of all time in terms of offensive contributions from a primary catcher, we have to look at some of the underlying numbers. But before we do that, let's look at these surface level numbers that everybody knows about, right? Home runs, 23, the best in the majors. He's got 45 runs driven in, and he has a slash line of 264, 379, and 637 at the time of this recording. What does that all calculate to? When you look at what this means in terms of weighted runs created plus from Fangraphs, league average is 100. That is what an average replacement level player would be in the league. Kyle Raleigh right now is at 188 in that category, meaning 88% better than a league average player. Now, as we look to some of the underlying numbers as to what could be contributing to this absolute powerhouse force that he has become, we look at two different factors. We look at his walk percentage and his strikeout percentage, and they're both trending in the right direction. Kyle Raleigh for this season has a walk percentage of 14.6, so about 15% walk rate. You then look at the fact that his strikeout percentage is at 27.3. Why is that so significant? Because his walks are trending up while his strikeouts are trending down. When you see this kind of approach at the plate, where he's being more aggressive in the strike zone, but less aggressive in chasing pitches, that is a recipe for true success. One of the other things that we want to look at in terms of being able to qualify and quantify the absolute tremendous season that Kyle Raleigh is having up in Seattle, we have to look at two other factors. What has he been doing that is different this year from his previous seasons? So in calculating from the 2022 to 2024 campaign versus the 2025 in two specific categories. The barrel rate. Now, for those that may not know, a barrel in terms of major league qualifications is a ball that is hit at 95 miles per hour plus within a certain launch angle. What that constitutes for Major League Baseball is typically a higher rate of success when balls are hit between those two metrics. In the 2022 through 2024 campaigns, Kyle Raleigh had a barrel percentage of 14.4. In 2025, he is barreling balls at 23.5%. That increase of about 9 percentage points is translating in such a giant way. And we're seeing it right now. To be able to have a catcher which deals with the grind of every day, and we'll get into the mental aspect of what a catcher has to go through to prepare for each and every day in just a moment. But to be able to put this together, this kind of offensive campaign, is absolutely a tremendous addition. Yes, Raleigh has been a very good catcher for the Mariners. In my opinion, one of the most underrated catchers in baseball over the last 4 years. However, this season he is taking it to another level. Right now, in terms of Fangraphs WAR, Cal Raleigh is in between Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani. It is insane to think the fact that this player is absolutely, in my opinion, going unnoticed by the national media when it comes to putting a spotlight on what he is doing. The other aspect that we want to look at that shows a change in this approach is what's called the pull air ball rate. And it is exactly what it sounds like. When he is hitting the ball in the air and to the pull side, the rate at which he is doing it has increased. Through 2024, from 2022 through 2024, Cal Raleigh had a pulled air ball rate of 29.8%, so about 30%. What we're seeing now is 38.2% in 2025. So what does that mean together? If you're hitting the ball harder and pulling the ball in the air to the pull side more, it is allowing for much more power. The other aspect that we look at in terms of kind of underlying numbers to try to isolate what is happening with this player is exactly that, an isolated power. What is that metric? It basically is the slugging percentage minus the batting average. And when you have a higher ISO, it means you are hitting the ball harder. You are producing greater advantages in terms of your extra base power. Cal Raleigh has increased his ISO power tremendously from even just last year of 2024 through this season so far. In 2024, Cal Raleigh had a ISO percentage of 216, essentially a batting average of power percentage alone of 216, which isn't terrible. It's not great, but it's not terrible. This year, Cal Raleigh has an ISO percentage at the time of this recording of 373. There's no doubt about it when you can have nearly a 400% difference between what you are slugging compared to your batting average. That is absolutely astronomical numbers. And it also goes to reflecting what he is doing great this year. The thing is, in terms of the context, right? We have to examine it. The greatest offensive season in terms of just home run totals was Salvador Perez with 48 back in 2021. We thought that we're not going to see something similar to that for a very long time. But we go back to try to understand some more of the historical context of it all. Some of the greatest offensive seasons from a catcher as a whole. We look back to three distinct players. Johnny Bench in 1972 had a WAR of 8.6. In 1997, Mike Piazza would put up 40 home runs and have an OPS plus of 185. And in 2009, Joe Mauer combined the art of patience at the plate with the beauty of contact hitting for a batting average of 365 and an OPS of 1.031. Cal Raleigh is essentially combining all three of those seasons into one in 2025. Now, yes, we are still just in June. There is still a long way to go. But if Raleigh continues to put up these kinds of numbers for the rest of the season, we can absolutely say without question, if he can continue this path, this will be the greatest offensive season a catcher has ever had. When you look at what he is doing right now, obviously as a primary everyday catcher, this is someone who is going out there and playing essentially every single game for his team. The rigors of the catching position, being out there with the gear on, being behind the plate every single time, the foul balls, the foul tips to the catcher's mask. But not only that, prior to the game, and this is where the mental aspect of being a catcher really weighs heavy. You go out there and you game plan against the opposing team, against the opposing pitcher. You have to know what the strengths and weaknesses are of each and every batter that is coming to the plate so that you can help your pitcher that day. And it's not just the strengths and weaknesses of the hitter, but the strengths and weaknesses of your pitcher. And to do that for a pitching staff of essentially 13 different pitchers for most teams is absolutely a grind mentally. To then be able to go out there and put up the offensive numbers that he is putting up is mind-boggling. The other aspect that makes this even more mind-boggling is that Cal Raleigh is a switch hitter. That means having to perfect 2 swings every single day, on top of all the mental work and the leg work of figuring out the opposing lineup and the opposing pitcher. There's no doubt that to be able to have the season that he is having thus far is putting him on an absolutely astronomical level. Right now, outside of Aaron Judge, you could say that this is the MVP of the American League right now. There's no doubt, if this season continues, Cal Raleigh is going to get serious consideration. You also look at the fact that his on-pace numbers are putting him to have a nearly 60 home run campaign as a catcher. There's no doubt about it, there's some of those that are going to come as a DH, but to be a primary catcher and put up a 60 home run season is mind-boggling. There's no doubt about it, Mariners fans have to be loving what they're seeing from the big dumper right now. But nevertheless, this is something that all baseball fans need to start investing in, need to start paying attention to and seeing what he is doing on a nightly basis. He's also coming up with some of the most clutch hits for the Mariners. This has been a team that predominantly for the last several years has had their offensive capabilities questioned and re-questioned time and time again. They were questioned again this offseason as to not having really done much to augment that offense. Cal Raleigh said, I'm going to put this team on my back and we're going to take it to another level. Seattle has been for a long time looked at as one of the teams that have arguably the best starting rotation in all of baseball. Part of that success is what they're getting from their catcher. Not even just at the plate, but what he does defensively for this team is a tremendous asset. But when you combine that with what he's doing now at the plate, it puts it at a whole nother level. So now the question we have to ask, is this something that Raleigh is going to be able to continue to do all season long? We'll have to wait and see. The odds-on favorites would say no, because of the grinds and the wear and tear of being an everyday catcher that is going to slow this pace down. But even a slight slow up of the pace that he is currently on could still see him put together the greatest offensive season that we've ever seen from a catcher. You add in that this is not a defensive slouch behind the plate, and we could see him have the greatest WAR season for a catcher. To be able to put up a 10 WAR season as a catcher is something that does not happen very often. To be able to look at a historical context of an 8+ WAR season, there have not been many. Buster Posey in 2012, 8.9 F-WAR from Fangraphs. Johnny Bench in 1972, we already spoke about. Mike Piazza in 1997, 9.1. Gary Carter, 1982, 8.4. Joe Mauer in 2009, 8.3. Brian McCann for the Braves in 2008, 8.3. Josh Gibson from the Homestead Grays of the Negro Leagues, 1943, 8.1. And Johnny Bench again in 1974 with a WAR of 8. There's no doubt if Cal Raleigh continues on the path that he is going, he could surpass them all. So obviously we have to wait with bated breath to see how this season plays out for the big dumper. But as a baseball fan, I would love nothing more than to see a player of this caliber go out and put on the greatest offensive season we have ever seen from a primary catcher. But I want to hear from you, M's fans. How are you feeling about the big dumper right now? Tell me your thoughts and feelings as to what he's been able to do for your offense in this 2025 campaign. Obviously, as a baseball fan, I love to see it, and I'm assuming that you love the same thing. Baseball fans, if you are not paying attention to Kyle Raleigh, take a look at his numbers and then comment your thoughts on what he is doing down below. As always, make sure you keep it locked in to this baseball channel as we continue to try to build out this baseball community. Hitting that subscribe button does truly help us build this out. Most of our viewers here on the channel are not subscribed, and by hitting that subscribe button, you are truly helping us continue to build. Once again, make sure you check out in our description below the Linktree link that has all the pertinent details to our merchandise store, sponsor links, social platforms, and audio platforms, as it does truly help us continue to try to grow this community and be able to continue bringing you the content that you see here on a weekly basis. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Peace.